Welcome, welcome, Internet. This is Reese coming at you with the Mattriarchy on a Thursday night. I am, of course, joined by my co-host, Matt McGibson.
Heyo.
And tonight we are joined in our first hour, and maybe longer, who knows, by Doug Garrett, creator of Lone Wolf.
Hey.
So we just were off stream here, just off the air, talking about the Little Shop of Horrors, because apparently there's a piranha plant that's been added to Smash Brothers. Is that what I'm hearing, or what?
Yeah, they added the basic Mario enemy of the piranha plant. They added it to Smash Brothers, and a lot of people have taken to making memes about piranha plant, but with Mean Green Mother from Outer Space playing over top of it.
So is it a playable character, the piranha plant?
Yeah, it's a piranha plant in a flower pot that fights you.
That's awful.
It's playable.
I don't
know bonus character for the game.
I'll tell you right now.
So,
I'm sorry, Matt. Yeah.
I was just gonna ask. So, Doug, how are you?
I am doing great. Absolutely
fantastic.
fantastic.
Really quick, I'm just gonna pull up the chat here on my screen. So I'm gonna need to mute the thing here. Okay. Danielle has joined in.
Hooray, Dan. So, Doug, while we're getting going a little bit, let me just ask you some of my stock questions, which I always ask everybody who comes on. How did you first get into comic books?
Well, I first got into comic books when I was a kid. I didn't read a lot in school at the time. It wasn't really one of my favorite things to do, and to encourage me to read, my parents would buy me like comic books. And when I was a kid, Ninja Turtles was the biggest thing on the planet. So they would always buy me like those Archie series Ninja Turtle books.
Right.
And I remember I got those, and I got a copy of Spider-Man, and that pretty much set me for life to be a comic book fan.
What was it about the Ninja Turtles and also Spider-Man that you found so engaging?
Well, once again, at the time when I was a kid, Ninja Turtles was huge. The cartoon was there, and I couldn't get enough Ninja Turtles. And the comic books, I'm almost the same way. And the comic books was a completely different story. It was different. So, it was like I was getting more episodes, even though you read them and stuff. To me, it was the same in my mind as watching cartoons. And Spider-Man was cool. I'd seen like the '60s Spider-Man cartoon, and I loved it. I think it came on Cartoon Network at the time. And that was when Cartoon Network first started, and all they played was like super old Hanna-Barbera cartoons.
Right.
And then Fox came out with that Spider-Man cartoon somewhere in the mid-'90s. So, I just fell in love with that. And the comic books, it was almost like I was getting extra episodes that I could read anytime.
Is there one particular theme that you connected with, or was it just the overall medium?
Well, I've always been a fan of the superhero genre. Any of that stuff, I don't know. It just clicked with me. I don't know how to explain it, but I knew the first time I read it or saw it, cartoons or anything, the like, I just fell in love. I mean, it didn't matter if it'd been a comic book or if it was only cartoons. To this day, I would still, have that connection to it.
Do you think now? Of course, you are the creator of Lone Wolf. And do you want to tell the folks at home a little bit about that?
Yeah, Lone Wolf is a comic book I created, and it's kind of based. A while back, I was doing some studying on some family history. You know how you see all the ads now? It's like get your DNA test and everything, and you can find out all this stuff. Oh, one of my uncles had been doing some studying and found several generations back that we had a Cherokee princess in our lineage. And so I started studying that. And I thought, man, this would make a really cool origin story for like a comic book hero. And so I just kind of ran with it. This independent comic scene right now is just exploding. And I've seen so many people start making books. I was like, man, I can do that. I've got to get in on this. I can make a book. And so I just took that story and just kind of, put it in a fantasy type setting, because Lone Wolf is about a 200-year-old Cherokee who hunts down supernatural monsters and protects the world, from unseen ghostly forces. So that was a little long-winded there.
No. That's the through the elevator pitch the end there, but that's a real intriguing one. I also have a huge interest in genealogy as well. Mine's almost all Northern European, going way back. But I think that people digging into their histories, their family's histories, sometimes you find out things about yourself you didn't realize. I think that's a pretty neat one. But more like next question I have on that is, did your childhood love of superheroes, how do you feel that meshed with this concept for Lone Wolf?
Well, with superheroes, I always like the heroes that no matter the insurmountable odds, even if everything was completely against them, they done what was right. They fought against, just overwhelming odds, things that were just ridiculous. But they always stood up and did what they were supposed to, or what they believed was right. And that always stuck with me. And that I wanted that to be a big part of my comic. In my comic, Wolf is the last in his family. He's the last one left, and he's got this just huge job to do. And it reminds me, like, I like the team up superhero books, like X-Men and stuff like that. But I always preferred the guys who's out there by themselves. I like Batman when it's just Batman. I like Spider-Man when it's just Spider-Man. Even Wolverine. I love Wolverine, but I prefer Wolverine by himself to the team thing. I just like that one-on-one. No matter what, this guy's gonna drag himself through the mud, no matter what, to get the job done.
I think that kind of grit, that determination to just make it work. That's something that my partner Barry feels really is missing in modern fiction. That there's too many people that'll just seem like they're giving up too quick, and that stoic, no, it has to be done and we have to fight forward, is something that seems rare in our culture these days. So I think that's an interesting perspective on that. So, is it a spoiler? Because this is one thing that I've been curious about. Of course, I did sign on to get the newsprint copy when it comes out, which I'm very excited for. But I don't know if this is a spoiler or not. I'm very curious to find out, how does a lone wolf survive 200 years? That's a pretty big stretch for a person.
Yeah, well, it's not much of a spoiler. One thing you'll notice is in the book, I try to leave you wanting more. I don't give you the whole thing all in one shot. I'm trying my best to make you want more. So pretty much I'll give you just a little bit here, just a little taste. But like I was saying, his throughout his family, his people, there's been guardians who protected the earth, and they all have these powers in this connection to the planet. Well, he's the last one. So he's pretty much the last one of the wielder of this magics and earth power, or what have you. And so that's one reason he's stuck around for so long, because he has all that power. He doesn't really know what to do with it, because there's nobody really there to explain it. He does talk to his dead grandfather, It's kind of like I stole a little bit there from George Lucas and threw a Force Ghost in there, but but he all these powers and stuff. That's what enabled him to live for 200 years.
Okay. Very
I like
cool.
the theme of, you got Jack Irons, an old cowboy, and now you've got a native man who's been around for centuries.
Yeah, yeah, I've noticed there's some similarities there between those. I hadn't heard of Jack Irons at first, and
I know.
Jed.
I'm not like saying you ripped off or anything. See, that's the interesting
Oh,
thing is a lot of people tend to get very, myself included sometimes, but people get very upset when they see an idea that they have or that they want to explore or that they want to work with has already been done in one shape or way by someone else. But honestly, just go for it. There's no such thing as a 100% original idea. And even with these topics that have been done before, there's so much to explore most of the time.
yeah. All I was going to say is like when I learned about Jack Irons, I was like, man, that is so cool.
That's perfect for a crossover, to be honest. Like that sounds like prime material.
Yeah, I think so too. And I'd like to see some more crossovers.
Yeah, I like that
indie
people are
scene.
already talking about their characters. We're all kind of creating our own characters and universes. Or some of us, like older Matt or Mr. Reese, has been doing it for over 10 years. And, the idea that now that these people are so excited to create characters and have them cross over with each other is kind of magical.
Yeah.
Ooh. Wow. I just got mom, guys. I'm about to be that guy, but I gotta go. I'll be right back.
All right.
Matt.
Oh God, what do I do? All right. Now that I have complete control, it's time to decide what I do with you people. All right, who's in the chat right now?
Okay.
Let's see. Okay, we have 2 people in the chat right now. Once they get around to hearing this, because I think there's a small delay, but I'm hoping that they'll start reacting to me taking over.
I'm sorry, Mom.
Let's see. Just waiting for something. I don't know. In the meantime, Ninja Turtles back. See, that's one thing because it always looked really cool to be back on that craze in the '80s. Because I was born in '98, so I loved the '80s cartoon, but I also grew up on the 2003 cartoon quite a bit. But like to be seeing like all how crazy it was and how big it was like growing up past Pokemon. You're like, oh, that looks like so much fun. The whole hype around it. I wish that I was back there to see it.
Yeah. Like the '80s was something crazy. I always loved Transformers and GI Joes too, and I've kind of been back on a Transformers kick.
Okay.
And
Did you see the new movie?
It seems like it's something. Anyway, I will get a hold of Amy. So okay. Sorry, guys, I'm back.
It's all right.
So, now one of the things is, and this is a question relating to the whole Jack Irons thing, which is what the last thing I heard before everything went nuts, right? Is of course Jack Irons takes place in the future, and Lone Wolf takes place in the present. I'm correct, right?
Yeah. Well, their stories. It kind of takes place in the present, but we do a lot of jumping around. The book has a lot of flashbacks and whatnot in it. I don't really want to stay in one place. I want to take a lot of little stories and tie it in together with an ongoing theme.
Now, I actually want to ask you a bit of a toughie, but one that I'm sure you won't have any questions answering or any problems answering. When it comes to the portrayal of Native Americans, people become more and more uptight about things being culturally, accurate, or some things are seen as insensitive, or honestly, sometimes it even seems like it's harder to create Native characters because so people see their inclusion as an insult, which I don't know, that's a separate topic. But like, how do you feel about that in modern media and with the portrayal of natives?
That is a tough one.
Don't worry, I won't shoot you for anything you say.
Oh well, I was just gonna say, I I don't think that it's wrong for anybody to write any race of person. I think that you definitely need to do your research and you need to be careful about what you write. You don't need to misrepresent anybody, but I don't think anything should be off limits.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that sentiment.
Yeah. You know, like you can say, I'm going to write a Native American person. Well, you know, what Native American people are you going to write? Because, you know, you can and I think one thing that people are guilty of and they need to watch out for is generalizing the Native culture, because the Cherokee are different from the Comanche. They're different from the Navajo and all that. So you need to be really careful when you're writing these characters, because even though they're all natives, they are very different people. They have very different cultures and very different beliefs. And so,
Yeah, that's for sure.
yeah. So as I'm doing this, I've done tons of research because I don't want anybody to be misrepresented. And, you know, where I live here in Tennessee, most people who have lived here and their families have lived here have Native American blood in their families. The person I was talking about that you go back several generations in my family where they came from, there's a bunch of other families in the same area. We all share the same ancestor. So, you know, I can pull like an Elizabeth Warren and say, you know, I'm so much percent whatever.
I knew you'd bring that up. I knew it.
It might not even, you know, that's been several, you know, generations. It might not even like really show up that much in my DNA if I done a DNA test. But as we're all humans, I don't think there's, like I said just a few minutes ago, I don't think there's anything wrong as long as you take the time and you show that love and that respect to those people when you write them. You know, I don't think anything should be off limits.
I definitely agree. One thing I say a lot as a writer, and I've told people this before, that like any topic, whether in comedy or just writing in general, any topic can be addressed. It's all down to delivery.
Yeah.
Now, when doing all of your research, and actually I've got two sets of questions on that, but with doing all of your research, was there anything that really stuck out to you about Cherokee culture that related to your own family that you hadn't noticed before?
Well, you know, I don't know, like the day and age that we live in, where it doesn't really, I don't know how people's going to take this. It doesn't really matter what culture you are. We're all so similar with the same technology and the same things that we can all aspire to. It's hard. It's kind of hard for me to relate to that in a way. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think you're worried about it there, but I think that's a really reasonable and really nice thing to say. Like, you know, we're all much more common than anybody really wants to admit, or we have so much more in common than anybody really wants to admit.
Yeah, I mean, like this day and age, we do. We have so much in common. You know, we have more in common with each other, all our different cultures, than we did with our ancestors, our blood relatives. You know, it's kind of weird.
Even just this generation, like, you know, the past generation to this one. You know, I've heard a lot of stories where people would say, like, oh, my dad was like a genuine, or not like a ton of stories. You know, people would say, like, I grew up with like really racist parents or something like that, and that kind of surprises me. But then, you know, this person is very, you know, very much the opposite type of type of deal. Let's see. Danielle wants you to know that she agrees with you with, you know, your sentiment that we have so much more in common than anyone wants to admit.
Yeah. One of the things that I think is actually the reason I brought up that question is, so my family's Welsh, right? And we, my grandfather, who was born in 1905, was the first generation born in this country, right? His father came over when he was a toddler and everything else. So for me, it was very recent, but I grew up in a part of the world where there weren't any people of Welsh descent that I could really communicate with. and I didn't grow up knowing a lot about Welsh culture or history, right? I'm just very firmly American, and that's just fine. When I got to be a little older and I got out on my own and the internet became a thing, I was able to talk to and connect to people in Wales and people who had moved here from Wales, and learn more about the history. And it was interesting to me because I found there were certain little things about my family's, our internal culture, that was consistent with the culture across the ocean from even generations ago. The types of jokes we told and the kinds of food we liked, just little things like that. That was it was weird to see how those things had sort of carried on, even though we're separated by distance and language and time and everything. And that's what spurred on my questioning there. The other thing that I was curious about was, and this is something that I don't know anything about. In Lone Wolf, he fights monsters and supernatural kind of critters, and of course, in modern America, we've got a whole group of monster legends that are practically unique to America, thanks to the movies. What kind of monsters did you find in your research?
Oh, like as far as the Cherokee go, they don't have a whole lot of like monster types in their background. They do believe that you see spirits. Like I wanted to write the grandfather in, that he talked to him, but I wanted to do a little bit of studying, and it was really cool because when I actually studied it out, they do believe that they can communicate and see their ancestors. Like they believe that they'll come to them. So I thought that was really cool. But as this, like you're saying, this takes place in America, I started doing studies on different monsters that exist in legends, throughout America. I wanted to touch on like some local stuff. I haven't got into it in my book, but at this point, but I have in the future. I want to do a lot of local stuff. There's I think it's in Virginia. There's this creature, and then of course you have stuff that's maybe a little bit more popular now, like the Mothman and things like that. I don't know if I'll ever touch on that because I know like Doug Naples doing the Mothman and some of that stuff in his book. I don't know that I will do the Bigfoot, but I do want to touch on some local stuff.
Have you ever heard of a Wendigo?
Yeah.
That's a really good creature to work with and with your material.
Yeah, I believe there's a native. Can't remember which group it is, but I believe it's one of their supernatural creatures they believe in.
Yeah, I remember reading a scary story about the Wendigo, and there's just so many different interpretations of it, but all of them are disturbing.
Yeah.
Can you imagine Santa Claus, but instead of reindeer, he has Wendigo?
I'm gonna let you guys in on a little secret. We're actually working on an anthology book right now. So I've got a bunch of different writers. Some you may know, you may not. I'm not really going to name drop yet. But we're all doing 10, 12, 15-page stories. And so we're going to try to put out like a 60, 70-page Lone Wolf anthology. But
I actually had heard something of, I did hear about, I think I heard about you guys talking about that. Or did you talk about that on Twitter? I feel like that's...
We've been hitting around at it, and people's been dropping like, I'm working on this with Doug and Lone Wolf and stuff. But like there's going to be a lot of monster stuff in that, and I actually wrote my short story in it. Actually involves a bunch of Japanese monsters.
Now they've got a lot to work with. Some more weird than scary, like the Tanuki.
Yeah, they have. There's just a whole list of really great stuff that they have, and I was like, how can I incorporate this into Lone Wolf? So as soon as like we get done with book one, I think Jeff and I might start on book two sometime. But the anthology, we should have it coming out sometime this summer.
That's awesome. I actually had heard somebody suggested it. Yesterday, I believe. They had said that different CG creators, or really just CG creators in general, since it would be like a light workload that can produce a lot of content, is they should do like like an annual anthology or something, and just they all come together and they write stories, and it kind of gets out there like, oh, this is this person, and maybe it has their characters, or at the very least has their style, and kind of leads, it would spread the word around for a lot of artists. And there could be like the lesser knowns, and there could be the big guys. Like, I mean, if Ethan Van Sciver and all of them had time, like, I think that'd be really cool to have a book from every single one of those, like a book with a story from every single one of those people.
Yeah, that's kind of what I wanted to do. But of course, it's all mostly there's a few guys that are up and comers and stuff. But if we all kind of pull together and do things like this, it's going to help everybody. Everybody will get to they get to share everybody's crowd there, and you have all those people promoting, and you're all working together to get this product out there. It can only go up. I mean, you're not going to lose no matter what. You're all going to come to it's at least you're getting to know people, and you're getting to work with people you've never worked with. It's just going to be nothing but positive all the way through.
Yeah, right now in the chat, Carl had said maybe some of the Japanese monsters immigrated to America along with the Japanese immigrants. For in regards to your story, that's actually kind of a cool idea.
Yeah, that idea was actually the basis of the monster in Call Me Bruce, or My Name is Bruce.
My Name is Bruce. Yeah,
Guan Yi, parody monster movie. That thing's just amazing.
Well, see, that's kind of what I did there. I got to studying like some of the Japanese stuff. I wanted to set this story sometime right at the end of the Wild West, because I love the Wild West. So I got to study, and in Japan between 1860 and 1900. Well, 1860 is when the Boshin War happened, and pretty much was like the end of the samurai class and all that. But between that period, you had Japanese people leaving Japan and moving to California and that area, and they had small fishing villages and everything around there. And that's kind of what I did in my story. Wolf is just kind of running around the woods there and comes across a spirit, and it ends up being a Japanese immigrant. Her and her husband were in the woods, and they got killed, and all that. It led to all this other stuff. But I really wanted to take factual something that really happened, and build on that.
I think that there's one of the most interesting things to do with historical storytelling is to play on the real events. I don't know if you remember this, but it's been probably 13 years ago now. Marvel toyed with the idea of reopening their submissions, because they'd been open up until like 89, and then they closed them up. And then they toyed with opening them back up again. And my buddy Chris and I came up with what I think, and this might be overselling it myself, but I think it was one of the best like wartime Captain America scripts ever. And it was supposed to relate a couple of times that Captain America and Namor met during World War II. And we went through and looked at a bunch of different actual World War II battles, and thought about how the inclusion of Captain America and Namor at these events would change the course of the battles, and played it up, and it was a lot of fun. But then Marvel announced that they weren't going to do that after all, and so
I'd still hold on to that because that sounds. Or I wish there were more World War II Captain America stories.
Yeah,
like from the modern perspective, because now what we get is stuff that looks vaguely like the movie and horribly written political dreck.
Yeah, well, Captain America is not Captain America anymore.
I don't think Captain America has been Captain America since 2007. So
they're still on that.
Really, yeah.
And I'm trying to remember like any Captain America stories between Brubaker's run, because Brubaker did a fantastic job. I don't know if you ever read any of that, Reese.
Yeah.
Like Brubaker's Captain America is some of the best that the character's ever been seen, in my opinion. I don't know anything that happened between then, although there was some like vaguely interesting one about like Dimension X, or a Dimension X or something that in Arnim Zola. That was like I think that was Marvel Now that did that, and I remember being pretty interested in that for a little bit.
Yeah, Captain America's been one of my had been, I guess I need to say, one of my faves for years and years. And well, they killed that.
That's what they do. I don't know, like Deadpool has been in comic book form has been reduced severely for me because of I'm not a big fan of Jerry Duggan. Like I feel like he just does random for the sake of random. Like there's no real wit behind it, and he made Deadpool way more annoying than he was in the first place, and also try to tack in this thing about, oh, he's got a heart of gold, but it kind of conflicts with stuff that he said in the past, like you could pay me to shoot babies and I'd do it. And like kind of he's not a psycho anymore. Like he's just kind of like, ha ha, that's so funny, that's so crazy. Like it's not actually like he was disturbing in some cases before. Still humorous, but disturbing. Yeah. I wish there was just more creative, or there was more of a backbone, so to speak, with the modern two. Although I think with Rebirth there was much more of this, but like with Marvel, for example, the creators are kind of given a little too much freedom, especially people like Bendis. Like they kind of just run in any direction they want. Even if there was some backbone there, some creative direction, these things would be much more fluid, and they tie into the books would tie into each other a lot better.
One of the things I think that has a factor on that is that there doesn't seem to be, and this is one of the things that Zach pointed out back in the day, was that there doesn't seem to be any editorial cohesion in Marvel. It's like the editors aren't really doing their job, and
they're not trying.
They're not
like they're not trying to
and stuff like that. And so you don't have, like, I know McGibson, you're a little young for this, but Doug, you might have been old enough to read I don't know if you did or not, but read Batman under the Denny O'Neil's editorship. And even though there were disparate titles and disparate art styles and disparate writing styles, there still was a cohesive ethos across all the Bat family books. And so when they came together to do the big events, like Nightfall or No Man's Land or whatever, nothing felt disjointed, you know. And I don't think you can say that with any of the big two in the last 10 years.
I don't know. I think Rebirth, actually, in my personal opinion, and I am much younger than you guys, but was some of the most hopeful that I'd ever felt. Because like once 2016 rolled around, for the most part, when Captain America was made a Nazi and Daredevil was no longer Catholic and all these other things, I was so upset. I was like, man. And then I just looked back and people were just saying like comics have been going down the toilet for the past several years. So I looked, I was like, oh, that's just depressing. So when Rebirth rolled around and it had all these things, I like Rebirth had so many books I enjoyed that it legit was giving me financial problems. Like I was working extra days at my job to keep up with it. And I loved it. I missed that like horribly, because all the books are kind of like with DC. It's not as bad as Marvel, but they range from like mediocre to really good. And sadly, there's mostly mediocre.
Like I stopped reading Batman. We're talking about Batman there a minute ago. Around the Nightfall and all that era, that was some of the best Batman we've had in the last 30 years.
Yeah.
I started reading. I kind of fell off the wagon and started back probably a year before the New 52. And that Batman was okay. I was subscribed to all the Batman titles at that time. You know, it was all right. It wasn't the best, but it wasn't that bad. But once they hit the New 52 Batman, I quit. I thought that was the most lazy relaunch of anything. And since that time,
that was Scott Snyder when he came in, and he was
All I know is they stopped right there. They launched Batman Inc., which was the stupidest thing I've ever seen in my life, and then they completely reboot everything with the New 52, and I just kind of stopped. I never saw
the New 52 is that they were selectively rebooting things because there was, I guess, since it was a Johns headed project, almost everything from the previous Green Lantern run carried over, but other characters like Aquaman and Green Arrow were pretty much back to square one.
Yeah. Well, Aquaman kept all of the Johns additions to it. So the Atlantean lore that was introduced is still in canon. They expanded on it, but it's still there. It has all the Flash stuff when Johns reintroduced Flash during the New 52. That's all still canon.
I know Rebirth didn't change anything up too much, but New 52 like selectively rebooted things. Like I think with Rebirth, the only characters I can think of, and this is kind of funny because Green Arrow was like kind of relaunched in the New 52, is that Green Arrow was relaunched and it was basically, another new take on the character. Blue Beetle was completely retconned, and that poor kid just can't get a break. Like he pretty much gets retcon after retcon after retcon, and pretty much every single one of the books doesn't do well.
See, and a big part of that I think has to do with the fact that they're and I've talked a little bit about it before, but in DC since 2006, the Identity Crisis storyline that broke the DC universe. And a lot of that is by questioning the goodness of the heroes, by demythologizing them,
deconstructing. Right,
deconstructing them. Not just deconstructing them as far as like taking them apart and studying them and putting them back together, but actually like turning them from myths into men. Because when you look at the Silver Age characters, they were never supposed to be men. And that's what separates Barry Allen from Wally West. That's why Wally West is more interesting than Barry Allen, but less impactful than Barry Allen. And that's also what made Barry Allen's death so meaningful in the Crisis on Infinite Earths. So when they undeaded Barry, they undid all of the character growth that made Wally interesting, and therefore undoing the Flash from any kind of long-term storytelling growth. And
you also had a very similar view when it came to Red Hood, and I feel like where you felt like that kind of undoes a lot of the purpose for Tim Drake, but I feel like that kind of opens more doors than it shuts with Red Hood coming back, because it makes Batman has to come face to face with what he's created now, or with Red Hood coming back, he sees his failures and what his failures have actually taught this, basically his a son of his, and it's just to show how different Tim Drake is.
But here's the thing: is what is his failure in that situation?
With Tim Drake, it was not being able to save him, and he, as much as there was like nothing he could do.
How was that person's failure?
That's what they keep playing it up as, and he constantly feels that about himself, even if I think Batman knows down inside that it's not true, but Batman puts so much weight on his shoulders that it drives him crazy.
See, I hate those kind of Batman stories. And
I don't like the ones where it's really like Tom King, where he like makes Batman into, he almost writes it like a self-insert of Tom King going to the therapist. I like I like showing Batman having trouble, but I don't like the whole thing of, oh, Batman's crazier than the Joker. He's crazy, because they say he's hanging by a thread. But what I say is that thread is strong enough to hold up an entire building. Like, that's how strong Batman's core is.
I think all these writers need to stop trying to be Alan Moore.
Alan Moore isn't Alan Moore. You ever read the Black Dossier?
No.
It's crap.
I heard that almost everything Alan Moore did outside of Swamp Thing, Watchmen, and League of Extraordinary Gentlemen was like insane and not really well written.
Well, I've heard really good things about his Tom Strong stories that he did for a while, and I've seen Tom Strong written in other things that's very interesting. And it's basically the if you took the Golden Age Superman and matured him to the point of sitting down with wife and kids, that's very much what Tom Strong's personality is. Kind of a mashup of the Golden Age Superman and Doc Savage. And it's fun. It is really fun. The stuff that I've read with him in it. So conceptually, it's good. But
so, like, to me though, like Watchmen and Swamp Thing, if you read those, it's complete deconstruction of superheroes. And Alan Moore wrote Watchmen to destroy superheroes. He was like, he's wanting to show that they weren't, like you were saying a minute ago, they weren't myth, they were man, and they were weak, and they all had faults. And now everybody wants to do the same thing.
Well, and one of the things about Watchmen, and like, see, because I actually think Watchmen's largely misunderstood, right? Because it's not a simple deconstruction in terms of like breaking the archetype, right? There is one character, actually there are two characters in Watchmen that are honest, right? That are honest and are consistent. And one is the comedian who is honestly an evil man, and one is Rorschach, who is honestly a good man.
Right? A good man with some really messed up methods.
Right. And that's because the world isn't good. So he's trying to force goodness on a world that isn't good, and that's what causes him to break. Right. And it's that the famous Rorschach line, never give up even in the face of never compromise even in the face of oblivion, right? That death is better than dishonor, kind of thing. But one of the things that a lot of people I think really miss is that while Watchmen deconstructs the superhero archetype, it also reconstructs it, right? Rorschach has a righteous death, and all the other characters around him are party to that. But Owlman and the Silk Spectre, they go on with life. They become something different. They rebuild themselves into something, and it's only hinted at. And then the final, of course, the book closes with Rorschach's journal being passed on, right? So that the things that he believed did not die with him. And I think that's an important aspect that I think people miss. It's like telling well, it's not like that, because that's an understatement. I can't come up with a good analogy at the moment.
But yeah, when it comes to Batman, one thing I don't like with Tom King is Batman always comes across as, I am a failure. I can't do anything. Like, it's miserable.
Yeah.
And Batman really should doubt himself, and like that doubt and dedication is what makes him Batman. But he shouldn't be a whiny little bitch about it.
Well,
he's so, like I said, that core is so strong. He's so he's so dedicated to doing these things. Like, he'll acknowledge his failures and work hard to make sure they never happen again. He doesn't go, "Oh, woe is me, I failed. Oh boy."
Well, I think you've exactly nailed it. Something. Batman isn't somebody who doesn't acknowledge his failure, but Batman is somebody who takes that failure and turns it into the next success.
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing with Spider-Man. It's the relatable bit of seeing how much someone can struggle on their shoulders with their work, their social life, and their superhero career. As it's relatable to the reader, but it also shows the dedication that sometimes you can pull that through. And if you work really hard, you can make everyone you can make everyone happy. With Batman, it's kind of it's like the raw dedication of it all, because that's really the word I'd use to describe Batman, is dedicated.
That's one of the things that I find most irritating about this current iteration, is that you actually see, at least under Tom King, I mean, Tomasi's run hasn't had that in there. James Robinson's run in Detective did not have that in there. Brian Edward Hill's run did not have that in there. They have and actually in Brian Edward Hill's is a good counterpoint to Tom King's Batman, because he's faced in that storyline, He faces up with some mistakes he made early in his career that have consequences that have come back to hurt people. But Batman doesn't run from the consequence. He faces it down directly, and he doesn't mope and whine about it. He simply accepts his blame, his part of the blame, and comes up with a plan to win. And as opposed to Tom King's Batman, who says, "It's my turn to be happy."
And see, that's the other thing is it's like my turn to be happy, basically. And then, his wedding rolls around. Oh, what's this? Really good progression for the character that'll be remembered for years to come and become part of the Batman mythos. Well, nope. That was what pissed me off the most. He was like, well, it's part 50 of an 100-part story. You're like, okay, F you. Like,
I'll tell you exactly. I wrote Tom King. Somebody shared one of his posts. One of the people I follow or follows me or whatever, and it came across my timeline where Tom King went on to say that this is part 50 of a 100-part story. Don't leave yet.
I'm not paying for 50 more issues of bullshit.
I wrote. This is what I wrote to Tom King. I said, it's like if I had a girl that treated me the way you treat Batman, she'd be walking to the curb right now. I mean, you write Batman kind of like a chump.
He really does. Like, I mean, I think he's got a lot of talent, especially when he was building up this wedding. Like, there was stuff where it showed Batman's weaker side because he was kind of opening up to Selina, and I liked that. And then it kind of just turned into, no, Batman's just moping the entire time.
Yeah, it's one thing to be vulnerable, especially to like your life partner,
especially to like your fiance, but
it's another thing.
Bitch, man.
It's another thing to just not let go of it. And the other thing about like that is like, and then there was one, and I didn't see it, but there's one issue, and somebody shared a sequence from it that I saw, where Batman and Catwoman are gonna meet Superman and Lois Lane. And so it's got the two couples each talk, and Batman's talking about what a great guy Clark is, and Clark's talking about what a great guy Bruce is. And the difference is in the conversation is so stark because Clark is saying that Bruce is a great guy, but he just doesn't know what a great guy he is. He doesn't understand how much everyone respects him, and I think that's pretty fair. But Batman, I mean, constantly compares himself negatively that he'll never be as good as Clark, and he'll never be as strong as Clark, and never be as brave as Clark. And no wonder she left you at the altar, you beta bastard.
Yeah, like it's like I said, I actually have a lot of, especially pre-wedding BS. I have a lot to like about Tom King when he came to approach, especially when it came to the love stuff, because aside from the cat bat thing, that's kind of dumb. But when it was just like him actually opening up to Selina and admitting, that he has like deep down inside, he does have a soft side. That's good. That's actually pretty good. But the direction he went afterwards. The other thing I thought was interesting, and I don't remember ever talking to you guys about this. Right after he had, when he was saying, "Oh, I'm getting death threats everywhere because I didn't marry the character, so now here's my bodyguard. I had to get a bodyguard because of people sending me death threats." And what's interesting is that guy, like this might have at Baltimore Comic-Con when I went up to around and I saw Tom King there, and I knew that this guy at the Tom King's booth wasn't Tom King, and it actually kind of looked like the guy in the picture from his thing where he's like, "Oh, I have to have a bodyguard now because of crazy people." And I was like, "Wait a minute, this is just the guy that you had at the convention that was holding your spot last year." And I might be wrong; it might just be two completely different, muscly, bald white guys. But the guy, this guy was a close friend of Tom King, who was holding his spot until Tom King came down from his room. Like after settling in, because he was going to be there the whole weekend.
So, Doug, changing the subject off of Batman and what I dislike about the current iteration of Batman, what are some things that you would like to see in Lone Wolf long term?
some things I would like to see in Lone Wolf long term.
Yeah. I mean, what are some stuff you want to do with the character?
I want to do a lot of stories throughout. My character has existed for 200 years. So I really want to be able to touch on lots of different little time periods and things that have happened in U.S. history. I like the historical aspect of it. So,
Because I was thinking about that. That being 200 years old makes him alive during the Trail of Tears.
Yeah.
I spent a lot of my childhood in northern Oklahoma, right? So that was just part of our existence, knowing about that, because that was the destination, right? That was part of that whole thing. And so, I mean, thinking about that, I mean, and my grandparents used to live in Tahlequah, Oklahoma, which was, of course, the capital of the Cherokee Nation for a while. I think it still is, actually. But so that was something that was always just part of my own personal existence. So thinking about Lone Wolf being alive during that time and how he would have perceived that's an really interesting thing. I'd be really interested to read that.
Yeah, that's something, I want to touch on. I want to touch on that. And there's also, during the Civil War here, there were quite a few Cherokee on both sides of the Civil War. And that's something else, I kind of want to touch on, the change in the country and kind of do the thing. I was talking about how we have all become more similar as time goes on. That's something I kind of want to go on about. I don't want to get preachy. I don't want to do things like that. I want the comic books to be fun, and I want everybody to be able to relate. But there are things that I want to, go into just subtly. I don't know if I'm the best writer to do such things, but I do want to show how the world has changed, even just here in the South, and how even through it all, the way are all still connected.
Right. I think one of those things that's the kind of theme that you don't have to get preachy about to really get the point across. I mean, that was every episode of the Mr. T cartoon from when I was a kid. It was every episode of Super Friends.
Exactly.
It was the name of the show.
See, that's my whole thing, man. I'm making the comic books and doing my own version of a cartoon that would have been out back when I was a kid. I'm just making what I want to see. You know what I mean?
You're right. Absolutely. Absolutely. You guys were talking earlier too about the kind of going off the rails a little bit here, but about the idea of comic book crossovers. And I've mentioned you a couple of times. We've got have a Western themed hero that I would love to see the adult version of our character, Buckskin Boone, meet up with Lone Wolf. So I think that'd be really cool. Our Buckskin, he's in the comic we created him for, which is our webcomic Force of Good and Evil. He's a bit of a what do you call it? He's a bit played for laughs in that one.
Yeah,
he's our homage to everything we love and everything we hate about growing up in the high plains out here in Wyobraska, right? And so he's a little bit silly, but there's a lot of room in his character for serious storytelling too. Because one of the things that defines his character, and one of the things we've used to play for laughs, but it's that he's such an amiable, big-spirited, smiley fellow. But it's not because he hasn't seen hard things in life. It's because he chooses to be positive. So even though, everyone thinks he's dumb or he's less sophisticated or he doesn't have a good family life or whatever, he doesn't care. He's going to smile anyway because the alternative is it's not acceptable to him, And so that's one of those things that and he's also a bit of a send up of the folklore hero too, in terms of he's ridiculously strong and everything else. Bit of Pecos Bill folded in that too.
Oh, I like that, man. That sounds really cool.
Yeah, I've really enjoyed so far. Like I said, in the comic book right now, our Forks of Good and Evil, it's not a book, it's a webcomic, but it follows the adventures of several characters in superhero and supervillain high schools. But we'll be wrapping that story up in the future and sending Buckskin out into the world to see what there is to be seen. And one of the things I'd really like to see him do is to return to the semi-rural high plains and face off against monsters and supervillains and aliens and all this comic book fare, but no one around him believes that that's happening because that's not what happens in the small towns.
I love
like
that, man.
One thing I've always really wanted to see more, and I'm sorry if I'm cutting you off, Doug.
That's fine. That's fine.
Yeah, one thing I definitely want to be seeing more with superheroes is small town heroes, because everyone's always, they defend the city, they defend this city, they defend that city, and it's never it's never guys like I guess like any of us in this conversation that live out where there's less people around that still need protection.
Yeah, I just like the concept of he's saving the world he's saving his town from all this stuff, and nobody believes it's going on. That's fantastic.
Yeah, me and my oldest son have been spitballing ideas, and I think we actually want to do an anthology style book, and I want to call it Quixotic: The Adventures of Buckskin Boone. Because Donovan read Don Quixote recently for school, and he was really upset that it doesn't end well for, I don't know if you've read it or not, but it doesn't really end well for Quixote.
Yeah.
And so we were like talking about the conventions and talking about the ideas and how do we turn that on its head. If we wanted to tell an actual hero story with those same elements or similar elements, how would we do that? And Buckskin Boone seemed to be the perfect vehicle for that. So,
yeah, that sounds something that I'd really like to read. I mean, it just sounds really fun.
Oh, yeah, I hope so. The framework I'd like to do for that book is I'd like to have an overarching story and have it like be a five segments, and so have the first and the second part be maybe like one connected thing, and then the second through fourth parts be independent stories that have elements that are part of the larger story. So, but that's a ways down the way. We've got a bunch of other projects in the works before we get to that. So that's like you were talking about the Lone Wolf anthology, and I got to admit, I was super upset that was going out, because I really wanted to jump in and try to come up with a story for that and try to pitch one to you. But I'm underwater with the projects we're doing in house, and there's just no way I can get that done.
Well, when you get some time, man, I got quite a few people that wants to get in, and they've got the same thing. We've all got life, we've got stuff that goes on, but we'll do something down the road. As many people that want to work together and do stuff like this, man, I'm all about it. So whenever you get time, just let me know and we'll get something together.
That sounds great. So maybe we can even talk team up next year or something.
Yeah, it'd be awesome.
So cool. I was expecting Barry to show up by now, but I have not seen or heard from him at all.
I could ask Carl if he wants to get on, if he's still watching.
That is certainly a possibility. I'm wondering if he didn't just like not wake up from his afternoon nap. So, or it looks like he just got on or got here. But anyhow, so Barry is one of our artists that works with our little company, Ideal Comics, and he's got us. I had a buddy, a former buddy, it's a long story I don't want to tell, who moved out to the Pacific Northwest a while back ago for a couple of years and met Barry. And they were talking one day, and my buddy Chris and I had decided to try to make a go of this comic book thing. And Barry was looking for something new in life and wanted to make comics. So he moved from Washington out this way and to look for work and get a new job, get a new start in life, and make comics. And so we've been working on it with him for a number of years on different projects. And he's one of the partners with us in the company too. So, but he'll be here pretty quick, he said. So,
all right. Carl says he can get on if you still want to extend the invitation to him. Well, I think our big topic of discussion for the second hour is kind of talking about what's going on in comics right now, and particularly the health of the industry.
Yeah, that's a big thing, and not necessarily just right now. Barry and I got into a big old conversation on Monday morning about when comics started to leave the fans behind. And each of us have some very interesting opinions about what we think are interesting opinions that we'd like to share to the listening public. But because I really do think that comics have in a lot of ways left a lot of their fans behind. And it's not just comics, it's mass media in general. And kind of to describe what I'm talking about is if you guys noticed the fervor over Jason Reitman's statement regarding the new Ghostbusters picture. My
favorite thing to come out of that was at Scribe Undead on Twitter, or Poe's Law equals true. He had said, it's like, wait. Yeah, I got the perfect response. Don't worry, the 2016 movie will always be there. No one's taking that away from you.
But he said, Jason Reitman, of course, said, I wanted to give it back to the fans, right? And everybody's like, what is that supposed to mean, right? Well, I put this to Brian Henderson earlier today. I said, what it really means is that he wants to create a movie for an audience instead of creating a movie for either the critics or no audience,
or like some really fringe audience that didn't even show up because the movie they made do very well.
Ghostbusters 2016 for an audience that didn't exist, right? Because
yeah, like
go to see Ghostbusters
well at all.
The people that go to see Ghostbusters pictures are Ghostbusters fans. That's who goes to see Ghostbusters pictures. You're not going to get a lot of fans of Seven going to see Ghostbusters.
Yeah. Speaking of bad, or at least bad box office expectancies, there's been a lot of talk about the Captain Marvel thing and how Brie Larson has torched the Captain Marvel PR trail. If you guys have heard anything about that, it's been discussed a lot that as she continues to open her mouth and say things like, I want to see less white men at the opening night, and entitled man babies need to understand that this isn't a movie made for them. It's made for women and LGBT minorities, children.
So she doesn't want anybody to see the movie, right?
Like she wants, I don't even get what the idea is. Like, to me, that sounds much more divisive than just saying this is a movie for everybody. Like, to me, that's what you should be. Is like, this is a movie for everybody. And we definitely want to make it like an inspiration to little girls. And I feel like there's a lot of things that they could get out of it. But this is just going to be, more importantly, this is a superhero movie, and it's gonna kick ass.
I saw the most impressive video. I didn't see it. I listened to it because I was driving. But there was Professor Geek did a really great video about the heroine archetype, right? And how the heroine archetype it's a character who is a woman but does things that are typically masculine in a way that reinforces her feminine, right? And
yeah, like women are very, like, you know, when they build muscles and everything, they're very strong in a unique way that a lot of media kind of fails to capture, where they just make men with boobs.
Yeah, and I think that's a big factor. But it's also, I mean, like you look at like a really good Wonder Woman story, right? It's not just Wonder Woman kicking butt and taking names, because there's always the afterwards, right? Like she's got that mama bear quality to her, even though she's just defeated a tank. And that's one of those things that I think is a really important element. And like one of the things that I just don't see happening in that Captain Marvel movie. I can't imagine wanting to go watch that movie. I almost want to just watch it for the sake of watching the train wreck. But I felt the same way about the 2016 Ghostbusters and haven't seen that yet.
I actively avoided the movie, and I heard terrible things about it from people that did go see it. Like I actively avoided the movie because of some of the stuff surrounding it, where they were, especially the way that the director handled things. Like I was like, this is horrible. Like, why would anybody want to come see a movie when they're being treated so horribly by you?
Yeah.
That was one of my first exposures to creators crapping on the fans.
Well, it happens every once in a game, and that's one of the things that if you really get down to talking about the history of comics and the fans, there just tends to be this, and it's not just comics, but there just tends to be these cycles where creators or creative types will decide that all of their fans are plebes and they're not worthy to be catered to. And that was part of the narrative, the descriptive idea of comic books creators as hot dog vendors. It was supposed to reinforce the idea that you're selling a product to a customer base. The customer is always right. Live with that.
Yeah, and then even then, there are some places where artistic integrity does come above sometimes what the fans want, especially when you get a fan base like Voltron, or the current Voltron cartoon has. But you kind of get, like Doug Garrett was talking about this, if the fans are going to get everything they wanted with VeggieTales, then the characters are going to be having guns and stuff like that. Like, he talked about there is some like artistic direction you need to take. But at the same time, you should listen to the fans so that you don't go in such a wild, different direction that you end up alienating a lot of people.
Well, see, and a lot of that comes down to honesty in your characters and your storytelling, right? Characters, if as imaginary people, right, these characters have a specific framework, and they have the specific characteristics, and they have these idioms that they embody. And so they're going to make certain kinds of decisions, right? And that's why, like, for example, back to the Batman thing, why do I dislike Batman so much in Tom King's run, right? It's because he doesn't act like Batman, right? He acts like
consistent with his previous portrayals.
Yeah, it doesn't make sense. Batman wouldn't be he might fall in love with Catwoman, but he wouldn't be, abused and used and chumpified in the same way that this Batman is. This Batman does not bear that characteristic with the rest of his thing. And it's just like, you look at like another example, Batman in A Lonely Place of Dying, right? Oh, by the way, Barry.
Yo. Hey guys.
Carl said he's up to joining us too. If you want to send him a link, Reese.
So I'm sorry.
Carl said he's up to joining us too. If you want to send him a link.
Well, let's start with this.
Okay.
I was just saying.
No offense, Carl, but
poor Carl.
I know managing 5 people on a stream gets to be real hard for me to direct that. So I have found 4 people seems to be the natural limit for conversation to not get cut off too much. But anyway, as I was saying, Batman in A Lonely Place of Dying is struggling with Jason Todd's death, right? He's not incapacitated by it, but he is affected by it. And you can see that. And Drake's entire response is Batman needs to be healthy. In order to be healthy, he needs someone to live for who's alive. So that's what Robin needs to be. He needs to be that anchor that gives Batman a reason to be calm and to be reasonable and to not give in to grief. Okay? but Batman doesn't know he's giving into grief, right? He's because he's so dedicated and he's so driven that none of that factors into his thinking, right? And so it's a really good psychological study of this. But when Tom King's situation, Batman's mopey because it's his turn to be happy, and he doesn't get that. And like, what? That doesn't even.
I'm always curious how that lines up with Tom King's time in the CIA. Like, it's like, sir, we need to neutralize this. And it's just like, okay, well, it's my turn. I finally got to sit down with the Netflix.
I don't think. I think a lot of it has to do with, like, we're seeing a little bit more with some of the current DC books coming out and fitting the same narrative that some of the Marvel books have been fitting lately. And the current Batman, Tom King's Batman, very much fits that narrative of just a sissy man, So that could be very much part of the issue. I'm not sure. I haven't really followed many other Tom King's works, but
I haven't followed it too much since the Wedding Blunder, and I didn't even.
Yeah,
I did not read the Wedding issue. I just remember seeing pages from it, and the New York Times had spoiled it. Like, they were just like
on
New York Times.
New York Times once again bringing it in. Thank you, New York Times.
Good reporting.
Don't blame the New York Times. It was the Russian bots.
It was the Russian bots.
Damn Russian bots.
I think it's interesting how that's always the go-to excuse now for a lot of things. Like, I forget who it was, but somebody was like just going. Oh, I know it was AOC talking about bots now, and like all these different people, like politicians, media figures, are just like immediately that's their excuse: bots, angry fanboys.
Well, and in fairness, I have to say, the right side of the aisle or the freedom leading peoples tend to, pop off with the NPC and the left-leaning folk with the Russian bots theme. And I keep just wondering if all the NPCs are Russian. Are we playing some early 90s game or something?
I don't know. The greatest thing ever I'm thinking about with 90s PC games is what was that game that Tim Curry was in? I think it was Command and Conquer. And Tim Curry played like a communist figure.
Yeah.
And, his famous line, it's like, I'm going to the one place not corrupted by capitalism. Space.
I prefer the term free market.
Well, you can demonize anything if it fits your prerogative or your narrative, so.
Yeah, that's very true. That's very true.
Hey, Doug, how you doing, man? You've been quiet.
I'm doing great. Oh, I'm just listening. I'm trying to learn something.
Don't worry. They Reese needs to be quiet for that to happen.
Hello. I dyed my beard blue and shaved it off, so it doesn't count.
So did I miss the discussion about good old movies coming out here pretty soon, or what?
Well, we were just padding time here, Although we are, of course, a little side note. I think we're still planning the 1 o'clock tomorrow for.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
We're very excited about that.
Yeah.
Next week we'll have to tell you all about it.
Yeah, absolutely. I was going to say, Reese, you have to tell them all about it, and I'll have to say yes, yes, and yes. I was watching. And I kind of like actually stopped watching so much on YouTube this morning because some people were just saying how great Alita is and how Rotten Tomatoes has completely jumped the shark and how they really people are, without getting too theoretical on it, but people think they just can't be trusted because of, they've been on the game for so long that they are no longer they're very biased.
Yeah.
I believe it. I mean, I do take a fair bit of everyone's opinions into consideration when it comes to movies and games. Like,
yes, sir.
Say, more so with movies, like say if the critics were saying this movie isn't very good, but all the fans as well as friends of mine were saying it's a lot better than people are willing to give it credit for, like Chappie, for example.
Yeah.
Like Chappie was a movie that critics hated, but I actually really enjoyed.
And that's something. Real quick touch on Chappie. I heard the same thing, and I actually follow these guys from AMC and other Collider. Right? I've told Reese about for many years, and great information. They're all YouTubers. They're all kind of like small time guys that worked on Burbank, and they've worked in movies one way or another, from effects to whatever else. And Collider is owned, is subsidiary of Disney, and they slammed Aquaman for a long time, and until the wave was too big to be trying to push back, and then they're like, oh, jumping on. And like I had people had said, yeah, but you're just taking these shots because of this or this, and I'd seen that, and I heard that, and I was like, wow. And then when it just became too obvious, so I unsubscribed to them, because it's too bad, because they're all very right there on the beat, they're right there on, and they're more or less, they're YouTubers, or you thought they were smaller enough to get an honest opinion from, but that's not the case. When I went back and watched more of their reviews and stuff, it was
Sometimes
very
I just
much
on the side like that. Like, I'm embarrassed to admit at this point, because of everything that's happened, I used to love Comic Drake on YouTube. I used to watch him all the time. And then as the time came closer to the election, as well as other issues, he got more and more politically left-leaning.
Mm.
And he had to basically take shots at people like every other episode. It almost felt like instinct, or like like he just needed to do it. And then
yeah. And
he was shilling for books like Iceman, which I knew were terrible.
Oh, and I'm all for I don't have a big problem. Anyone can speak their political mind and anything like that. At a time, but when you start just targeting, targeting without any sense, without any, just your opinion, and it's wrong because you don't agree with it or like it. That's just ugly, and I'm not going to watch it. Even when I agree with you politically. Like I like a lot of the stuff. I watch Evan. What's his name? Van. I can't remember. He's got a show that you guys probably watch, but
Ethan Van Sciver.
Ethan Van Sciver. Yeah, sorry, and he's great. But man, he's been on it lately, and I was watching some today earlier. I just turned it off because it was all just so heavy. I'm like, I definitely get what's going on. I'm just gonna go ahead and step back for a bit, though.
He can get pretty angry about things, especially lately.
Yeah,
and something I worry about with him.
Yeah.
Well, see, I've kind of had to step back from some of those channels. You can definitely find trouble and find something to be angry about.
Mm.
But I think at this point, we all need to start trying to find things that we agree about.
Absolutely.
We all love comics.
Yep.
We all need to find something. We all love movies. We all need to find something that we all agree on and work towards that, instead of dividing it even further.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, that's what I kind of wish there was some more of that positivity going around, because one thing I noticed going to community college, especially in the art class, you've got these people that are very, very outspokenly liberal. And
yes.
but when you're in there and you're talking about Pokemon and Animal Crossing and Smash Brothers, like they're, it's everyone's together. It's like the boundaries that divided us never even existed in the first place.
That's the best, man. Yeah.
Well, I think
that's the wonderful part of life that's kind of been leaving lately.
Well, I think one of the things they have is that one, and this is one of the things that I really wanted to talk about too, is when did it happen? Which I'll pose that question in just a few minutes. But one of the things that I think there has been for at some length of time, right? These ideas that have grown up that are contrary. Actually, there was, what's his name? Owen
Wilson, great actor, I love him.
No, different Owen.
Wow.
Comedian.
Wow.
Yeah.
Sorry. I was
the guy's name. Anyway, there's a comedian who just put out together a PragerU video talking about why people aren't getting along, and it had to do with the fact that there are different people agree on the same goals, and maybe disagree about how to get there. But if you have the same goals as other people, you can always agree, right? So if two people believe in freedom, right? Actually, this is a great example. I am out on an out of the closet Republican, right? And my wife is a libertarian. Now, I am not a libertarian because I don't believe that some of the positions make sense in the real world. Because if I had my druthers, I'd be an anarchist. Because I don't trust anyone. So why should there be governments? But because governments have to happen, we have to have some standards of rule, and my beliefs fall in line mostly with the Republican Party for various reasons that I don't want to get into right now. But Amy and I both love freedom. And because we both love freedom, we have way more in common than we have disagree on. We may disagree on tax policy. We may disagree on the authority of the police. We may disagree on the best way to order a burger, but we agree on way more than we disagree on.
Because I was going to ask about disagreements with you guys, because Christopher Lawton, who has worked with you guys in the past, and I believe you were talking about continuing to work with him. He posts some things that are very liberal, and he's very open about that. And I was kind of curious, you guys are kind of the open example of having friends from all walks of life. Has that ever impacted your work or anything when you guys disagree on things?
Not really. Because
he actually seems fairly also pretty fair about things. Like he'll tweet something out and you're like, oh well, I guess that's pretty fair. Well, he doesn't really come out as like a really I hate everybody who opposes me.
No, Chris is you're very point on right there, spot on.
Yeah, and I mean that is part of it. I mean, part of it is like when we disagree on stuff like that, they're often boiled down to disagreements on fundamental ideas, and there is no if you disagree on what the word the color blue looks like, right, then there's no middle ground there. So you can either argue about it or you can say, okay, well, what do we have in common? And so that's kind of where that boils down to in that case, is that we're just like, well, I can have this conversation, or we can just go past it and find out where our concordances are. And I think that's more important.
Yeah. I think, never mind. I was going to say something. I forgot what I was going to say.
It happens.
I had a point earlier when you were talking that I wanted to mention, but I forgot exactly what it was.
So, let me go ahead and we'll ask the whole panel this. Like I said, I really do believe that our mass media.
Oh, I know what it was. Yeah, sorry.
Did you want to go ahead?
Yeah, I just wanted to Matt's. Mr. McJerkface's point about Pokemon and stuff. This is something I've seen over the years because it's happened to multiple things, but in just most recently, Marvel Comics and Disney and movies like that. But political agendas and happenings that have at times targeted different things, and throughout time and through investment or whoever else is a mover and shaker in that, because everyone, unfortunately, everyone is invested in politics, and so it happens. Right now, I mean, you talk about Pokemon right now, where people can talk about, just maybe you're using it for example, but not everything can you talk about without people flipping out. I mean, like I will use, different books sometimes for reference, and depending on where you're at, that'll get people going. It just depends kind of like where and who and what people are thinking about and what's been targeted or used as a political machine.
Well, and then there's the fact that politics, when you really boil it down, and I can't remember where this definition came from, but I love it, that politics is the affairs of men in society.
Yeah.
And that's men as in men and women. So women are that too.
Yeah, the word men is in women. That's what I always say. I know that mankind isn't as used as often anymore, but
that's very.
You don't throw a woman to man eating sharks. That's still not a good idea. That's my favorite way to look at that. But the affairs of human beings and society, that's what politics is. And so it's unavoidable. I mean, that's why office politics exists. That's why sexual politics exists, because that's just a way of describing that when you get a bunch of people together in a place, those relationships and those attempted relationships always bounce off of each other. So, and that's one of those things that I think we have to be mindful of as we're doing something, but not something that we want to just put all of our eggs in one basket, so to speak, because there are legitimate points of difference that people can have, and people can try out different things and see what really works. So, changing the subject, as I was about to a bit ago.
Sorry.
No, it's fine. It's fine. It was a good closing thought on that subject. The question we mentioned earlier that we really feel is that our mass market entertainment producers have turned their backs, have turned their hearts away from the fans, right? From the people that actually want to consume their product.
A fair assessment, more or less, yeah.
Yes. When in comics, when do you think that happened, Barry?
Oh, I'd say like specifically within like the years, or just
or the time period or the course of events or whatever.
Well, it's really heated up in the last 3 to 4 years, I'd say.
2014 to me is like, that might not have been the starting point, but that's definitely when it became more noticeable, and it was made worse by everyone being so divided.
Yeah. You know, yeah, I'd say 3 or 4 years. You notice comics changes being, and like we've always said, forced on people. And then if you didn't agree with that, or if you noticed it, and you questioned it, you were demonized as either a racist or a bigot. If certain things didn't happen that you didn't agree with.
Threw that label around, and they still do way too easily.
Like, very much. Oh yeah, absolutely. Very much.
A serious thing, and especially when it comes to race and sex. And when you accuse people of that over like the pettiest things, like when people, I've seen it a lot with trash talking the Ghostbusters 2016 movie or Captain Marvel. That's because you hate women. What's so different about this movie? And you're like, well, I'll tell you. I think this is shot very poorly. I think that this person has no emotional range. I think that she talks very poorly about her audience. And on top of that, the effects are terrible, and apparently done by the same guy who did the Dragon Ball Z movie, the terrible one from 2008.
I love that movie. Just kidding. as far as horrible movies, horrible movies to love.
Someone jokingly said, like, they're like, why does this movie look like the crappy Dragon Ball Z movie from 2008? And someone said, well, and they looked it up, and apparently the special effects guy is the same one from Dragon Ball Z Evolution or Dragon Ball Evolution.
That's amazing. Like, I'm all for growing and getting better, like, getting more chances, right? But
that's kind of
what else? Like, I'd like to say, like, what else has he worked on that we can say, okay, it's excellent since Dragon Ball Z, and it's excellent, and now he's doing this. I'd like to know that. Maybe that's something I should look up right now.
Go right ahead. I forget the guy's name, but someone had figured it out.
Yeah, I'm gonna check.
But yeah, people are saying in that, but it's instantly all these toxic white man babies who hate women, and that's not the point at all. Especially because no one had a problem with Wonder Woman or Alita, and if it was handled differently, no one would have a problem with Captain Marvel.
Well, here's something like that. I noticed this right off, like when I was watching, because when Captain Marvel, because I'm an artist, so I'm a very visual guy. Some of the covers that we've gotten over the last few years and everything of hers are beautiful. Those just win me over, just in like being interested in the character, and her being brought back after Rogue beat her butt back in the 80s. Wow, I can't find anything I'll check some out. But like just the way, like up in the sky, big blue sky, and her suit, her uniform, her blue and red suit's very like iconic.
I always thought it was black. I know it's been drawn as blue sometimes, but I always thought the iconic
lightning bolt
black with the lightning bolt.
Yeah, that's cool too. But like it's too people say it's too sexualized, and I can get that, right? Like that happens, whatever. I like both of them, but like the way that people can draw up in the sky just are pretty fancy. And but
Actually,
what?
Oh, really quick, I'm gonna cut you off for a second, but
Go for it.
when it came to her modern design, like pre All New All Different, when she got the
agenda design,
she actually had that modern costume, but she had the long flowing hair, and her body wasn't drastically different.
That's that. I can't remember who did the cover, but it was beautiful. It was big old, sky scene, and she's up there glowing, and her hair is long, it's flowing, it's glowing. It's wonderfully done. It's something actually I try to emulate a lot in different images. And anyway, but when I was watching, the first thing I was watching about the trailer there is, as I looked this up, is she's a bitch. There's no easier way to say it. When she corrects, she's constantly berating and correcting Nick Fury. Nick, badass Fury. You know what I mean? It's like, Tony Stark would be a smart ass. Tony Stark would, just slang things back. Again, we all know Tony Stark, no one else is bigger, smarter than him. And she's sitting there, she's not being funny, she's not being whatever, she's just freaking saying, shut up, you idiot.
Yeah,
like the cat scene, and then the scene.
Fun. It's unpleasant. It's like when you have those classmates that just don't shut their mouths about
I know it all.
And also talk trash about everybody and don't give second chances, like the insufferable ones.
Yeah, exactly. Looking down our nose at you.
One of the moments you have with the banter in Iron Man or Thor, where that the lead characters they're just really full of themselves, right? But there's still a lot of tongue in cheek in there,
and it's still entertaining is the biggest thing, because on top of her lack of emotion,
and it's a banter, right?
Right. Exactly.
Thor says something, and then Loki's like, I think you might be full of crap. And Thor's like, yeah, I'm probably full of crap. Let's go beat him in the face anyway, right? And so you have that give and that take in there, and there wasn't that in the trailer anyway. Who knows what there'll be in the thing. But.
Right. And another thing is, besides that, these guys that we have, they're all presented as flawed. Tony Stark is extremely flawed. Cap was a nerd that never got the girl,
Well, she's flawed, but it's not intentional, and it's
no. That's what I'm saying. That's what she's. The flaws in her are the ones that they don't intend to portray. Yeah, they all think is just fine. Like, you know what? You go out there and you look down at those suckers because you are better than them. Like, that's not a hero. That's a villain. That's the line that you cross when you're a piece of crap villain. Just because you think because you're doing what you think you can do doesn't make you right. It's the it's a personality. It's the things of course and there's of course all the small things like saving humanity, but that's a small one.
Yeah.
It almost. I was gonna say it's almost too bad that if things didn't seem to be pushed on us a certain way, certain agendas, that we didn't because Marvel now owns X-Men, that we didn't see her introduced with Rogue. And with this character, the way they're doing with Thanos and the tie-in, it wasn't Adam Warlock like it should be.
Speaking of which, I am not looking forward to that with because that what's going to happen is they're going to call Captain Marvel their big weapon against Thanos. Yeah. And that great movie that was Infinity War and the great characterization of Thanos is going to be beaten by Planky, the plank of wood.
Yeah, exactly.
And guys, hold on for a second. I'm not sure that that's going to happen because I heard a quote from an interview with the Russo brothers earlier today where they were lamenting how much they had to dial back, how much effort it was to dial back Captain Marvel's powers so that she couldn't beat Thanos. They said we had to seriously weaken her in order to make the story work at all. And
why would you have to weaken her? I mean,
I've never found
she's not a character who can go toe to toe with Thanos. So
they act like she's Superman or some Goku, and she's not. Like she can.
Yeah.
She can fly and shoot lasers. I can think of like 17 other characters who can do the same.
Yeah, she'd have a hard time with Iron Man.
Part of the thing with the Captain Marvel character is being able to pull energy from the quantum zone, so that she's not supposed to be exhaustible quickly.
Right.
So that would be the situation where she's indestructible and inexhaustible. So that would be the challenge with something like that, is because she could just never stop punching. So if you're a drop of water, eventually you work your way through a stone. So it's that kind of a thing, I think.
Okay.
You guys hear? I'm reading this now. Apparently, YouTube is now talking about demonetizing comic or demonetizing videos based on negative comments. Like if you have comments that are toxic, then advertisers may pull out from your video.
You know what? Advertisers and all that crap is not real unless they're trying to now. Because like last year, 2018 was actually the only year that YouTube has broken even. So what's their point?
I never got. Yeah, it's just the whole thing with the advertisers being holier than thou.
That was a load of crap.
They benefit from than
that
trying
was just
to
a scare.
avoid some asshole commenting on their video.
They're just using it as an excuse to pull more videos down.
I was gonna say they're just doing a scare thing, so they have an excuse.
Well, I mean,
kind of like Patreon.
When it comes to that too, is like on one hand, like I don't necessarily care because it's all free will association. So if an advertiser doesn't want to be associated with me,
absolutely,
I can't make them. I shouldn't make them, right? But of course, I'm not anyway because I have 20.
Well, that doesn't matter though.
And I love every one of you. But that's
thank you. It's my 50 accounts.
Where were you when my post got 4 likes? I was making 4 accounts, bro.
No, I was trying my hardest, man.
Oh man, yeah, that was a picture that got shared around a bit ago. But yeah, what other?
So, when do you think that? When do you think that comics started leaving the fans behind?
Who are you talking to?
Doug.
Doug, yeah.
Oh, when do I think they? Well, let's see. Well, there's been different times when they've done this.
Mm.
In the 90s, they left fans behind when they become overwhelmed with greed. But I believe here in the last, I'd probably say the last 4 or 5 years, for sure, it stopped being about the fans at all. I would say probably during the Obama administration, when identity politics became more more important than anything else.
Mm-hmm.
It's not about making money. It's not about giving the fans what they want. It's about preaching this message. And if you don't agree with that, then we don't want you to buy our product anyways.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's definitely become way more prominent over the past couple of years.
Yeah, and they've used, and they've like we touched on earlier, they've used the demonizing to to say you're wrong if you don't want to buy their comics, you're either a bigot or a racist, and that's man. I mean, like I've had friends that because I didn't agree with certain athletes' narrative or process, he straight, when it came down to it, he straight called me a racist, and I was like, wow, man. Well, I'm sorry that I can't reason this argument out without it getting
up to events because of political disagreements, and I think that's just the pettiest you can get.
Yeah, and it's regrettable too. It's so much. It's crappy, and you feel like crap.
So Matt, I guess that's kind of the consensus, but I actually think, and this is me maybe being a little conspiratorial, I think the last 4 years of extreme activism on behalf of the comics establishment is actually the death throes of a movement that began in earnest about the year 2000. And I think a lot of it was honestly when Marvel decided that rather than make their comics accessible by keeping them inexpensive and keeping them in grocery stores, that they would roll up the shutter up their business. It went exclusively with Diamond, and they launched the Ultimate line, which was a middle finger to their heritage.
Ultimate is like a interesting idea in and of itself, but it began to take on all the problems of the regular Marvel universe.
And instantly, it created anti-heroes out of most of the characters. Captain America was a racist. Ant-Man was a spousal abuser. Hulk was a drug addict. Right out of the gate. Quicksilver and Scarlet Witch were incestuous, and their father knew about it and didn't care. Wolverine was a pedophile for all intents and purposes, and it was one of those things that then a lot of that falls on the shoulders of Mark Millar, but they created a universe full of horrible people. And when some of the fans said, "Hey, that's not my Marvel universe," they said, "Well, this universe isn't for you. Go and read the main universe where you could have your old characters like a fuddy-duddy."
Yeah, that's what they yeah, I remember that.
I know you've got some resentment for Mark Millar, but I've actually heard rumors that he might be red-pilled.
It took him long enough.
No, like he actually has, some various people have said things, and I know that he's made jokes before where he's like, I wrote a strip once about the Punisher being this pathetic pushover, bleeding heart person. And it was like, he goes out there and instead of gunning criminals down, it's like, I know that you were dealt a bad hand by our capitalist society, but I'm here to let you know that I support you. And, of course, the criminals just punch him in the nuts.
Yeah.
That was Mark Millar, that wrote that.
Yeah. Well, I talked about I've talked about this before, Matt, about my reaction to reading Civil War and how I really feel that, and a lot of it is the Civil War took the themes and the characterizations from the Ultimate Universe and forced them upon the 616. And
I could definitely see that, yeah. And then the other thing I thought was interesting, I wanted to bring up to you because Civil War has been on your mind a lot lately, with you getting around to reading it and having such strong opinions that are kind of outside the norm for a lot of people that are very passionate about this event. Was to talk to you. Would you think that Civil War would be better suited if it was non-canon and in like a spin-off universe where it could do its own thing?
Absolutely.
Yeah. Well,
just like Kingdom Come is a great story when it didn't impact the DC universe.
Yep.
Some of these, I feel like they could really benefit from telling more stories outside the norm. Aside from Age of Ultron, that was just weird. But like not the movie, the comic line.
The comic event, yeah.
It wasn't the worst. Like some people were saying that it made them so angry that they literally took the book outside and threw it in the fire. I don't know if I'd go that far, but it definitely wasn't worth the amount of tie-ins and stuff. It wasn't worth it didn't need to be a massive event. It could have been like a short story.
Well, and you look at the Age of Apocalypse, right? I don't know if you read any of those, but those are some really fun concepts.
Those are amazing, yeah.
And they didn't, aside from a couple of characters that enriched the 616 universe, it didn't break anything in the 616 universe.
I'd actually describe Metal in much of the same light. It expanded the universe and it gave a lot of characters fun things to do during the event. Like there was good stuff for Aquaman, the good stuff for Hal Jordan. There was like this little group that was like the Gotham Resistance that was going up against super powered version of Batman's Rogues Gallery. It was a lot of fun just all around. Like Metal was a great event for me. It's one of my favorites.
Yeah, I haven't read Metal yet, but
it's something. But the tie-ins are actually really good. Like I'd argue that there almost isn't a bad issue of Metal because the tie-ins and everything are so much fun too. Especially like the evil Batman, where they explain to you what happened. Like they tell you how why there's the female Batman that took over Atlantis and stuff like that. And to be fair, the Diversity in Comics would describe the event quite often as it feels like someone was smoking a blunt. It's just like, dude, like what if Batman was like a girl and he had like a trident, bro, and it was like Aquaman's trident, bro. And it does come off a bit like that, but there is quite a bit fun to be had with the event.
Yeah, I'm all for like mixing it up, especially in alternate universes. Those are always fun to see what. That's what really, you let. That's what I wish. Like, what's his name? Who's that? Grant Morrison. Can't stand that guy. He's a good writer, but he doesn't care about any of the characters at their core. He doesn't care about what anyone has done on the characters before, up to the point where he starts writing on them. Mm-hmm. Give him a pocket universe to start writing on, and just let him have fun. But don't let him screw things up.
That's what I've heard about him. Though I will say I haven't read the past 2 issues. I'm behind. I am loving his Green Lantern run he's currently doing.
Yeah, he's a good writer, but
he is. Like I
he doesn't
there about him kind of overstepping his bounds.
Yeah. Oh man, his ego's twice as nice as anyone's I've ever seen.
And I don't read other people's comic books. Why should I?
Yeah.
You should, because you didn't create the universe. It existed before you. Yep. You are participating in somebody else's imagination. If you're doing that, you owe them the debt to do it right.
Yeah, respect. It's you're working on this character. If you respect this character, otherwise, what's it say about the character you're actually working on? I guess you're just collecting a paycheck. That's all well and good. That's great. I'm glad you can get paid so much for being arrogant. But he's not the beginning and ending of all good writers.
And like the first couple arcs he did with my first introduction to Grant Morrison was the first couple arcs he did on JLA when he brought Batman and Superman
and Dan Jurgen.
The Justice League, and they were really, really good.
Yeah.
Up until he started putting in the Fourth World stuff, and then he kind of jumped the shark, and I don't really think they were very good after that.
Yeah.
And then he went on to destroy the X-Men. So
let's not talk about the X-Men, because that will get me going forever.
But Grant Morrison and Mark Waid are the 2 people that are responsible for the story of the Kingdom, that places the elements of Kingdom Come into the DC timeline.
Right.
One of my contentions on this, and I think I'm the only person in the world that thinks that way, but the DC Comics timeline, the Kingdom Come timeline, requires the heroes to fail, and so in order for them to succeed at the end of Kingdom Come, they have to have failed before that. Right.
That's the point they're at. Yeah, everyone's old and they've slacked off.
In between the DC universe circa 1992 or thereabouts and the DC universe circa Kingdom Come, everybody fails in the middle of that time period, right? And so there's 15 or 20 years in that gap where everybody sucks, and then they come back and then they're awesome and heroic again, and that's great. So when Waid and Morrison decided to do the Kingdom and stick little pieces of that into the mainstream continuity, they set up a course for failure that could only be rectified by Flashpoint. That the creation of the Flashpoint event became an inevitability because of these little pieces that poisoned the well as it went. And so they had to relaunch continuity. I don't think they did it the right way, but it got to the point of destroying it. And if you look at a lot of the rebirth, part of the reason there was hope is because they were sticking elements of the universe untainted by the Kingdom into it.
Yeah.
That sounds like lies. Sorry, just kidding. No. No, it's very accurate. I mean, it makes sense. Sorry, Matt.
I spend too much time thinking about fake universes.
No, you've spent, like, I haven't spent the time that, like, I have my own universe and I have my own characters I've talked about with you and bringing each one into our Ideal Comics now over time. But you've architected quite a bit of history for our own Ideal Comics, so it makes sense. I mean, people do that. People, when writers or anyone create, even when I'm just making like a little picture of somebody, I'm thinking, what's this guy doing? What's this gal doing? What's their purpose? And it it spirals from there. And when you have things like DC and Marvel with so many people that have been invested in into these things on so many different levels.
Well, and really, one of the impulses with that directed the shape of the Ideal Comics universe was Chris and I were reading comics and swapping stories and working on script back in the day when DC started pointing its universe toward destruction.
Right.
And And with that, we said, well, how can we avoid that? Or how can we set it up? And in fact, in our universe, a conflict that degrade, I mean, a society that is degrading over time that will lead to a place where it can be, where the society itself can be reborn. And that's coming down the road yet a ways. But that's always been part of our thing, is looking at the concepts of cultural revolution and heroism and all that stuff that's tied into the subtext of our silly superhero stories. And so I'm excited to see that play out a little more. And of course, that's something Barry and I have spent a lot of time in the last year talking about.
Well, 3 years actually.
Yeah, but I mean, a lot of that in the last year has been kind of getting to, you know, the next X project will be
right
in that, I think.
Right. And what we've talked about, like, you know, the big cataclysm we have, you know, all that stuff going on. That's actually when Chris went away to school, and you know, I was talking to you and I was working on forces with you and stuff, and I decided to come on to Ideal Comics full time and everything. Well, not full time, but you know what I mean, partner. The idea, the appeal of having a universe that has characters that people care about, that aren't going to be like just used and jerked with and thrown away, you know, that people are going to respect. Because I'm still bitter over what happens, you know, what's been done with the X-Men and other characters, you know, throughout comics. And you know, it's gonna, you can say it's gonna happen at some point, or it's gonna happen sometimes, or whatever like that's gonna happen. But having our own company and having multiple characters, you know, that we can weave this deep, rich, you know, universe through, it's appealing and it's fun, and you can have multitude of different characters and have them all be true to themselves. You know, that's part of, just kind of makes up for that stuff that, you know, really frustrates you when you get your, you know, the things that are close to you when you're a child or whatever like that. You know,
well, that's one of the ironies too, is you know, when especially, you know, bringing back to the current movement, and like I gotta say that, like, you know, the comic resistance, if you want to call it that, the rebellion of the fans against the mainstream has had several wings. But I know I've been on my soapbox chatting about it since I was writing for Fanzine back in the early 2000s. But you know, you have Doug Ernst that was out there in the forefront, getting a lot of word to it, but one of the most interesting aspects of that movement is in the recent past, when Zach got out there with his show and started his old D&C thing, and what creators kept telling them is, well, make your own book, you know.
Yep.
And then that became the refrain. Anytime somebody said something, he's like, "You think you can do it better?" And for my money, I'm like, "Yeah, I think I've been doing it better since 2005."
I know, like, I mean, honestly, with some of these things, like when Nasser says stuff, like, I know I can do better. Like, I believe him. Like, Nasser can be a little full of himself sometimes. Like, I love Nasser.
A lot of people can.
But Nasser, like, you know, I totally believe him. Like, he totally can kick these guys' ass. Oh,
hey,
Carl joined us.
Hey, how you guys doing?
Now it's a party.
Hi, Carl.
Good. So, Carl, here. First of all, thanks for coming on. Second of all, you have 4 minutes.
Overtime.
So, enlighten us. When do you think comics, like the comic book establishment, started leaving the fans behind?
That's actually a tough question. I don't think I have a concrete answer, because it was a very slow and gradual process.
Yeah,
it kind of just happened slowly over time.
Yeah,
Turn into Carl's armature hour, man. You got some armature.
No, I would actually agree with that. In fact, I don't know if you caught my screed from earlier, but I definitely think you're right on the money with that. That it is a situation that happened a little bit at a time.
Boiling the frog.
Yeah. I was gonna say, do you think it? I was actually gonna add to that. Do you think
Well,
it was
that's actually how
actually?
things change. Is like, you know, these people are so radically different, and some of it was kind of a big snap, like the 2016 election. But for a lot of these things, like where we became where people came to accept it over time, especially like on their end, it happened slowly, and they didn't even notice
Mhm.
Yeah, boiling the frog is a very perfect analogy.
Yep. Yep.
That's actually a an analogy that I'll make a lot of the time, and then people will get weirded out by it. They're like, "What?" And you have to explain it to them.
Yeah.
And then they're just like, "Why would you ever think of that?" I'm like, "I'm not the one who made it up."
Yeah. That's good.
It's turn of the 20th century science teachers did this, not me.
Yeah, well, it's been used for a lot recently, and I love it because it's spot
Well,
on.
it's so fitting for like almost everything that's happened recently. Like, how
Yeah.
did we get here on like so many different issues?
Yep.
Boiled frog.
Yep. Slowly
There are larger cultural issues
through popularity, through pop culture. Is that's how it's been. Sports. Lots of things. That's crazy.
So, Carl, are you still there?
Yeah, I'm still here.
I see a desk.
I
see a hand.
Nah, I'm done with this.
Carl, look what you did. He saw your hands, one look, and he's done.
Yep. Time to go.
I understand the feeling.
I'll join you, or I'll come. Me and Carl will have our own stream with blackjack and hookers, and forget about the blackjack.
The blackjack is the best part.
The game blackjack or the weapon blackjack?
Jack Black. It's the actor.
Or the pirate.
His last name first.
No, the manga by Osamu Tezuka.
Yeah, there is the.
Never was a blackjack fan for the manga.
Well, I didn't.
For Berserker.
It was a manga. I was flat back to one of the recurring villains of Aquaman in the Golden Age was a pirate called Blackjack.
Was he black?
No.
Was his name Jack?
That's one of my favorite moments in Aquaman history. Is that one time where back when Black Manta was like essentially Malcolm X, and he takes his helmet off, and Aquaman's just like, "Oh no," and he's like, "Yes, now you'll see why they call me Black Manta."
Dude,
that really happened?
Yeah, that's a legit line. It's an older issue.
Yeah,
when
laugh.
Manta's goal was very different.
That wasn't long before Black Manta killed Aquaman's kid. So,
Yeah, so it's pretty close to one of the most important parts of the mythos.
Yeah. See, Black Manta. Well, Aquaman was created. It was marketed to young kids for a very long time, and then in the early '60s, maybe even the mid '60s, they started aging the stories up with the readership, so that by the late '70s, a lot of the readership was high school age kids and older, and so one of the things that you ended up having is the stories got super serious in those Bronze Age tales. And Black Manta went from being a villain of the week, just with nondescript, no origin story, to being like a serious threat. And so the funny thing about it is Black Manta, at the same time,
he was Killmonger before Killmonger, if you think about it.
Yeah, he was. But at the same time, Black Manta in Super Friends was just a silly villain. And then you go read the Black Manta the Aquaman comic, and he's there murdering children. So it was quite a shock, quite a difference.
Do you remember, Reese, when back in like the 2000s, when they tried to change Black Manta's story to be about he had autism, and that's why the way he is?
There was a story in the 90s.
I thought that was the early 2000s when they did that.
Well, there was something in the early 2000s that used autism, but there was a nondescript story in the 90s because I think part of it is they're wanting to veer away from the potential racist connotations of Manta.
Oh, being too close to like a black nationalist.
Yeah.
I feel like I like the direction they've taken him in now, where he's just a pirate.
Mm-hmm. I think it makes a lot of
ties to Aquaman and his family.
So,
but I like the direction that he's in right now.
And I think some of those things can cross over pretty well. I don't dislike the idea of him being a black nationalist or a non-nationalist. In fact, in the movie, the idea that there's that subtext, but there's also the man with no nation idea. was pretty appealing. I think they did that really well in the film. But okay, this is a really weird ending, especially with Carl just getting here and he's laying out something that's probably going to be awesome. So, Carl, before I go, I got a question that's just selfish that I want to know. When are we going to see Chapter 2 of Holgrave?
Oh, I'm working on it right now. This is the first page.
That's awesome. I really wish I should have had you on sooner so I could watch you draw.
Well, to be fair, earlier I wasn't drawing this. I was drawing something else.
There you go. There you go. Well, I'll just have to follow it when it gets online there. But I am being told that I got to get off air here. It's my ride's come to pick me up, so I got to take off. And
Right.
Doug, thanks a ton for coming on. It was awesome to talk to you about stuff.
Thanks for having me. I enjoyed it.
Yeah, thank you. I'd love to have you back again.
Yeah, definitely.
Excellent. And Carl, can we plan on you for next week?
Sure.
We don't have any
that'd be
next
fun.
week. It's been a while since you were on, so I think that'd be great.
We'll have like a reunion. We could have like a reunion episode because Nerd Wonder said she'd love to come back.
See, I think that's awesome. Let's see if she's available next week. Let's do Carl and Nerd. That sounds great. If she can.
All right. Well, if that's going to be it for tonight.
Yeah. And so before I go, a couple of quick notes. For those of you who are watching, thanks for tuning in. I really appreciate that. Make sure you follow up with these guys. I will get their social media links into the description later on because I'm behind right now, and I did not do that earlier because I'm lame. So, Doug, is Lone Wolf available for purchase anywhere, or is it just wait until the Indiegogo is fulfilled?
The Indiegogo is still open right now.
Okay.
I'm about to put a print order in. So if you wait another week or two, you might not get in.
So you guys get out there and get Lone Wolf. I know I'm getting mine. I'm super stoked to get it too. So Carl, of course, has got Holgrave out there on the internets. What website is that on?
It's on Tapas.
And it is
It's not pronounced tapas?
Yeah, Tapas, Tapas.
Yeah. Is it the food or is it something? I don't know. It doesn't matter. And of course, Barry is available at the Art of Barry VT on Twitter. And he is, of course, working with us, idealcomics.net. And we've got our Indiegogo out there for Expositioner Vox Populi, which I didn't talk about at all today. And I probably missed a real chance to do that. But there you go.
All right. Goodbye, everybody.
See you guys. Thanks for having me on, guys.
Yep. No problem. You guys, vaya con Dios.